Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing. And today, we've definitely got a very interesting combination to try out. And I don't know how it's going to work. It might work out great, it might be a little disappointing, but it's definitely a very interesting combination of shell and choke. But first off, right off the bat, I did get a new camera set up here, so I apologize if you guys might be able to hear the loud frogs in the background, or the colors are a little bit off or something like that. We're still getting things dialed in, so bear with me over the next few videos. And truth be told, this is actually the second time that I filmed this intro to this video since I lost the first video file. So that's why I'm in a different jacket than I will be later on in the video and stuff. But we're working through things and getting it figured out. Either way, for the shells I've got here today, I brought out some of these. The Hevi-Shot Dead Coyote buckshot loads. They are the 12 gauge, 3-inch, 12 pellet load of double-aught buck, moving at about 1350 feet per second. And these do have what they are claiming a frangible 12 density non-toxic type of a pellet here. To my knowledge, that's just the typical Hevi-Shot type of stuff. It's not the full-on TSS, but it is a little better than lead. And they are supposedly frangible, which I do want to test at some point. Either way, these are not a cheap shell. This box of 5 was just shy of $50, so you're looking at almost $10 a round. So they're not cheap, but they have been some okay performers so far. I don't know that I would spend that kind of money on them personally, but we'll see what they do through today's setup. And as for that setup we've got today, I brought out my Remington 870 special purpose with a 24-inch Carlson's barrel on it. And for a choke, we've got the Trulock Boar Blaster in the gun. It is a 700 constriction, so 0.700. Pretty typical modified-ish choke type of range, but it has shown some promising results so far. So will it work with these 12 pellet Dead Coyote buckshot loads? In theory, it should be a pretty decent combination, but we'll see what it can actually do. But as for the test today, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity, and I've got the templates that we can lay up over our target when we go check out our results. So let's get you guys a view of that target and see what these Dead Coyote 12 pellet double-aught shells can do through the 870 and the Boar Blaster. Might work great, might be disappointing, but these aren't a cheap shell, so I'm hoping they perform well. So let's go take our shot and see what we get. Alright, so that shell gave us 1392 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1350. So out of that 24-inch barrel, plus an inch and a half or so sticking out of the end for that choke, we actually exceeded the boss claim just a little bit. And from what I can remember from previous testing, that isn't too surprising. So looking more than good enough up here for a velocity, but what kind of a pattern did it give us down there at 40? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. The white dot was my point of aim. The paper is 36 inches wide, but we did have all 12 pellets on here, even though we might have favored just a touch to the right, which I think was probably me, more so than anything else. But we saw a very nice looking pattern there. There's no doubt about it. We had a nice clump of them right there in the middle, so we definitely have a little bit of a hotter core. We might have a couple little quote-unquote flyers around the edges, but even then, the overall size of that pattern is not very big at all. So technically, I think you could call them flyers, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not just strung out all over the place. I did measure the size of that pattern, and it's a little wider than it is taller, which for some people, that's exactly what they're looking for. Now, how consistently would it be shaped like that? I don't know. But for measurements, we had 18 inches wide by 6.5 inches tall at 40 yards. So that's definitely a very solid performance there all day long. So on the bare sheet of paper, looking pretty good, but let's throw a couple templates up, which will give us a little better idea of how they look in a more real life scenario as well. So first up here is our 10-inch circle, and when we put it over our core, we had 8 out of the 12 pellets within there at 40 yards, so can't really complain about that. There might be one little hole in the top left of that 10-inch circle, but still 8 pellets worth of Hevi-Shot double-aught going through the vitals on a Coyote or something. That's more than good enough. And even the ones we don't have in there are right around the edges or right behind the template. So looking pretty good there, but let's throw an animal template up, which will give us an idea of how it would have looked in a hunting scenario as well. All right, so here's our hog template. I don't have a coyote template, and these are supposedly a frangible load, so I don't think I would suggest trying them on a hog, but this template will at least give us a size reference because a coyote would be just a touch smaller than this hog template is, and you would have the vast majority, if not all of your pellets that would have actually hit that coyote. I mean, right through the vitals there would absolutely be devastating. There's no doubt about that. So at 40 yards, you're going to anchor that coyote, and with that kind of a pattern, you could easily push that to 50 yards and maybe even 60 as well, but I'd highly suggest patterning at that distance to see what happens. But you've definitely got a hot enough core area there to get the job done, with a little bit of leeway on either side as well if you needed it. And even down to something like a fox or raccoon or groundhog or whatever you might be having to deal with around the property for these shells, that's still going to get the job done out to 40 yards. Now for a price point, are they worth almost $50 a box or like $9 to $10 a shell? In my personal opinion, no. We've seen buckshot loads that are 50, 60, 70 cents per round that pattern just as good as these do. So in my experience, we've seen buckshot loads that are $1 or less a round that perform just as good as what these do. So in my personal opinion, I don't know that I'd spend the extra money on them, but to each their own, and clearly this combo would be more than good enough. So overall, not a bad performance at all from that Trulock Boar Blaster. It does seem to prefer either the little bit larger pellets like triple aught or the higher pellet count loads like 12 or 15 so far from our testing. So I don't think we can complain too much about that pattern today. That's more than capable of getting the job done for what they're designed to do, but it's not going to be a super cheap shell at the same time. So there is definitely some trade-off there. And here's the wad from that shell. Very standard equipment, definitely nothing fancy, but it seems to have done the job perfectly fine for today. Doesn't look like we really snagged on anything, although one pedal is open a little farther than the rest, but nothing stuck down in there, no major damage, so nothing I'm really concerned about here. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? That's a very solid performer all day long. We had a couple little ones that were around the very outskirt edges that you might call a flyer, but still, they're pretty close in there and they're definitely not blown all over the rest of the paper. So what, 18 by 6.5 or so at 40 yards? More than good enough to get the job done for what they're designed to do, those predators or varmints or whatever. I still want to test the frangibility of those shells to see if they actually do what their claim is, but for patterns, they're pretty solid overall. Now, they're expensive, so I don't know that I would go out of my way to find them, but if you wanted to use a heavy shot load like this for one reason or another, a non-toxic state or whatever the case might be, then these seem to be a pretty decent option. They're just not cheap. So I guess leave all your thoughts down in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see out of this combo? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Hevi-Shot Dead Coyote loads? I think they also might have a BB and a T-shot or something as well. So what kind of experiences have you seen out of them? Have you run a Boar Blaster choke, and what have you found that it likes? And what other tests or choke combos or whatever do you want to see with these Dead Coyote shells? Let me know all that down below. So with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys. As always, we've got the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.